Yeah.
Happy yet?
and welcome to the Carriage Works for another roundup on what we've been doing. This one is Carriage 18. This has been a very drawn out job. We started this in May last year, then we had the roof off the building, it had to go back out, and by the time we could bring it back in we were getting too close to the winter work. So it was put off until this year as the carriage wasn't needed. We brought it back in probably mid-May this year, and we started the work of sanding it down and building up the new coats of paint and that work on it. But we haven't been working on it full time in that period, so it's had about a 2-month break while we had to get the Talyllyn carriage through the paint shop. Hence now we're getting close to middle of September. We've just got it to the stage where the gold can start going onto the outside of it, the lettering, the red fine pinstripe line. That will be starting at the end of this week, and we're very, very grateful to Andy Williams, who's come in to assist with that. But we've also done work to the inside of it, so it's not just the exterior. The wood graining has suffered in odd places, so we can see down here that panel shuts against the step there, and it causes damage. The waist rails often get worn out because of passengers leaning out over them or dogs' paws up on them. So we've had to take all that off, rub it all down, fresh buff coat ready for the wood graining to go on. We've also done quite a lot of work on the interior first class in here. So when we restored this vehicle in probably around 2005, the first class panelling Norman Bond built for us, and he seemed the logical person to do the restoration work on it this time round. It had suffered water damage, so it had gone black in places where the bird's eye maple was. Looked rather naff, to be frank. So Norman removed it all, gave it some TLC, very carefully scraped the old varnish off, and basically he's bleached the staining out of it, and he's given it good coats of fresh varnish and been reinstalled. Again, I'm very grateful to Norman for doing that, because it helps with the workflow of what we've got. We're hoping that this will be done. We're aiming for the vintage weekend, but there is an awful lot of lining on this, so I suspect it's probably just going to miss the vintage weekend, unfortunately. But it will be available for next season. So as you can see, Sarah's working the wood grain scumble paint onto the surface there. Has to try and get an even coat before she can do any of the graining effect. So in order to create some of the effects in the wood graining, we use a mix of tools, like a steel comb. We've got various different steel combs, different types of brush with different bristles in them. So she'll now go over that steel combed effect, and what it'll do is it'll leave highlights, and just do different effects with it. We're not going too overboard with knots and that on this, because they're only patch repairs onto the whole overall thing, and we don't want it to look obviously different. It will be different because obviously it's new wood graining. But late last year I identified that we'd got a bit of an issue with the headstock on number 6 van, which is the converted quarryman's carriage here, single balcony one. The balcony board here had rotted quite a long way back, and there was very little of it being supported at the end there, and what we were finding also is the steelwork was extremely loose, and the buffer face was extremely loose. You can see here the old headstock. It's perished quite a long way back, and it's got an awful lot of splitting coming into the end of it here. This is a Jarrah headstock, so it dates the period of when that was done to the 80s, which at the time we were using a lot of Jarrah for various vehicles, this one being one of them. What we've had is, after the May weekend, the Society May weekend, we withdrew the carriage so that a volunteer could take on rebuilding the end of it over the summer period. He's now got to the point where this is largely complete, this element of it, and he's just dealing with a bit of rot in the gutter. Sorry about the noise. The gutter on the engine side of the carriage had rot in the end of it up on this section here, so he's made up a new length and he's going to fit that in the next couple of days. Again, we are hoping it will be done for the vintage weekend, but it's looking like it might just miss that as well. But that's the case with volunteer projects, unfortunately. We're not doing a repaint on it. It'll have a few touch-ups and that will be it. But then it should be good for a good few years to come. Behind me, we've got the PUA coach, 1111. It's getting tired. We've known for a few years that the floor was quite rotten. So in that carriage, it's got a steel plate all the way through the carriage floor, all the way through it, and they planted on top of that some 18mm ply. The problem with that is it's sandwiched it between a waterproof barrier on the top and a waterproof barrier on the bottom. And it's resulted in, once water got in, that the plywood started to rot because it couldn't dry out. We're not changing that, unfortunately, because if you think about how old the carriage is, it's lasted over 30 years, which is good going anyway. So we're just ripping all the floor out, putting new wood timber down, and then putting the new Ultro flooring over the top. But we're also doing a load of electrical work to it. It's having a complete new electrical system in it, and we're going to put a few vents in the roof as well to help with the damp. When you think of the P-Way volunteers coming in, they're all wet, usually at that time of year, and the carriage gets a lot of condensation in it. We're planning to do repairs to the paintwork and just give it a fresh coat of varnish as well. So when it leaves here, it'll be good for the winter, particularly as our volunteers that work out in all sorts of weather deserve a good heated carriage to go and have their teas in and that to recover from the bad weather. So hopefully that'll be done mid-October, just in time for the winter work. So we're inside the PUA coach at the moment. You often hear people going on about the strength of the Welsh Highland carriages. Under here, you've got two centre spines. This steel plate is all fixed to. This carriage was the prototype for the underframes on the Welsh Highland carriages that were built in the 1997 era, because this is around that same period. That's what they based those underframes on. You can see the steel all over this, and particularly with the door at the end there, where all the damp gets in under it, it just permeates through the plywood. We're going to put a plastic barrier at that end, like we do in a lot of the carriages now. We put usually in the vestibules, we put the recycled plastic flooring down, which helps protect water from getting into the wooden part of the floor in the main saloons. So we're going to do that at that end particularly. We're not actually doing the floor replacement beyond the kitchen because that end isn't that bad, and it's a lot of work at that end. Whereas here, I mean, this end's a lot of work as well, but it's not as much as having to try and do that end. And this is the end where most people sit and have their break. So we've brought Bodder's Gartref into the workshop. It's been on the list of carriages to be worked on for quite a while, because it's quite poor condition inside. The upholstery is now getting very tired. The spring units are failing. They date back to its first years in service in 1997-ish. So they're going to need some attention. The windows have been leaking very badly, and they've caused a lot of damage internally, both to the panelling in here and to the edges of the floor. So they've got to be sorted out, and externally we need to take this roof off to remove some insulation in there, which we suspect is not actually up to regulation standards. So that's all going to be dealt with, and they also get a plastic roof at that time to match the other vehicles. So internally, we're not actually going to touch the ceiling area because, again, that's a lot of work, but there's nothing wrong with it. It's all the lower stuff that needs attention, so we've got to do either restoration or replacement work on all the walnut panelling, and we're going to put a new floor in it in various places. Now we've stripped it out, we can assess to what extent the floor is going to need attention. The vacuum cylinder protrudes slightly into the floor space, so actually if we take the whole floor out and put thicker floor in, and we can put some sound deadening in, and it also help us avoid the vacuum cylinder. We've also got rot at the two ends anyway, like we often find in the vestibule areas, so again we'll be putting the plastic down in the two outer ends. But it'll get a full repaint, and hopefully it will be ready for around April time next year. A lot of the stripping out we've got in here done this last couple of weeks has been done by a volunteer we've had come visit us, Luca, who's come from Italy. This is his second visit. He came last year, and we're very grateful to him because a lot of this stripping out has meant that we can have a good clean head start on it when we do finally put some of the paid staff onto it. So we've just delivered the first Talyllyn carriage, number 24. They're very happy with it, obviously. We're very happy that it's gone. We've got space in the workshop again. But then we need to move on and get the second one done. So this one's number 25. It's same construction as the other one, but it's a mirror image. So the disabled end is, and the observation bit of it is at this end rather than at that end. So swapped around. It's pretty much the same as the other one in all respects, other than that. So we've got parts already made that we made at the same time as doing the first one. Tusak's just putting the gutters on at the moment, having put the canvas on in the last day. And then he'll move on to the mouldings on the outside, which have been started, as you can see, but they're not got the waste rail moulding on yet. The intention is to get this into the paint shop as soon as we can, because obviously we're coming up to the winter work and we want to get this out the way. And then it will come back into the workshop for the internal work to be finished off. So the intention is to try and deliver it early in the new year. But again, that's dependent on how many people we have working on it and Bodders Gatland as well. May last year, we had to take the old timber store down to allow us to have the new roof on. You may remember back then we did a bit in here to just show what the old timber store was like before it was ripped down. In that time since then, we've had a new building put up, as you can see, and it's far bigger than the old timber store, which only came to here. The intention is that, yes, there'll still be timber stored in this area, but the new machine shop will move into here, so the present machines will move across to here. At the moment, we're using it for storage of parts from the carriages, but shortly, the floor will be concreted up to rail height. You can see we've had the track extended, and I'd like to thank the volunteers who were in over the last weekend bolting that down. I'd also like to thank the volunteers that have been painting the walls as well. And the volunteers who came and knocked the old wall down. They've done quite a lot actually. But the intention is to slowly progress this. It won't be a very quick job because we are trying to use volunteers where we can. So we're probably looking at next summer before we actually get to a point where this can become an operational machine shop. We'll probably have the timber back in here before too long, but the actual machines can't move until we have a new extraction system in place and all the electrical work has been done to allow the machines to basically be unplugged and then plugged back in. But you can see it's a large area. It's about twice the area of the present machine shop, so it will allow us to do more machining operations in a less congested space. Because at the moment you can only operate with 2 people in our present machine shop, depending on which machines they're using. With the workflow we have, that's a hindrance at times. So to be able to allow us to spread out and have timber right next to the machines rather than having to cart it across the building will make life a lot easier and a lot safer for everyone. So a while ago I asked Alan, Norton and Aled if they could look at the exterior of the Carriage Works. Was quite a while ago, it must have been last year I think. But Alan and his team are extremely busy. They've done Penryn Station and a number of other projects, Harbour Station and things, with their mini bashes. So it's taken a time for them to get round to the Carriage Works. But the Carriage Works, obviously, it's not part of the NLHF project, so it was looking very tired on these 2 front doors particularly, and they're the face to the railway, so all passengers go past. This door had got quite a rotten window frame, particularly on that door, and Mike's had to cut the old frame out, and we've had new frames made, and he's inserted those frames over the weekend, and now they're in the middle of just finishing the paintwork. Mike's just doing the hinges now. Alan's just doing another coat on the gloss finish. We've still got to put the posts in there to make it match the other door, but that will come later. There's no need for that over the winter. We can worry about that in the spring. But what I would like to do is thank Alan and Mike and the team for what they've done. It's very much appreciated, and it'll make the building look tidy and good for the next few years, and protect the doors from having to be rebuilt. So thank you very much, guys.